Hi there. This week on The Right Key, my guest is Frosty. No, I'm kidding. My guest this week is a true polymath of entertainment, Everett Bradley. Everett's been a Broadway actor. He created a Broadway show. He's been a musical director for a major daytime television program. He's toured with Holland Oats. He's toured with Bruce Springsteen. He's toured with Bon Jovi. He's recorded with David Bowie. He's a motivational speaker, and he's an incredible force of positivity. So hang out with me and Frosty and listen to what Everett has to say. This series was conducted in the spring of 2020 via Instagram, and the audio and video quality do reflect that format. However, the words and insights of these guests are still priceless. Look at how great you look there. You've done this before.
Oh my God, I didn't even realize this was all set up like this.
Okay, I always do this thing. I always say a little bit about everybody that I'm talking to, about the guests that I'm talking to. So I'm going to say my bit. Everett Bradley is a multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, actor, dancer, choreographer, playwright, musical director, producer, and public speaker. His career is as diverse as it is impressive, with over 190 recording credits to his name, and in a variety of roles. He's recorded and toured with Quincy Jones, the Bacon Brothers, David Bowie, Cyndi Lauper, Holland Oats, Michel Legrand, Empire of the Sun, U2, Bruce Springsteen, and Bon Jovi, amongst many others. He's also been the musical director for the Meredith Vieira Show, Carly Simon, and is the creator, show lead, and driving force behind the very popular and funky holiday show, Holidelic. I'm tired.
I know. When I hear all that back, it sounds like a nutcase.
It is. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of astounding.
It sounds like, lock him up! Lock him up!
But I want to start at the beginnings, because you were born in South Carolina.
Yeah.
How long were you in South Carolina? How old were you when you moved?
I was born in a town called Greenwood, which I think is sort of west of the state. And we moved when I was 5. We moved to Muncie, Indiana.
Okay, to Muncie, Indiana. So you didn't really get too much South Carolina going on.
Not really. Only just from my parents, like growing up, because they never let go of their southernness.
That's all right. That's all right. And you moved to Indiana, and I read that South Carolina was more of the southern and roots soul vibe, and then Muncie was more people listening to kind of Americana, rock and roll, and
totally correct. I mean, a lot of it was my siblings bringing records home, and they were listening to like Motown and Philly soul and Southern funk too. They were listening to all that and bringing it, and my aunts and uncles too. They were sort of youngish. And that's where I got that side. But then, yes, when I got to Indiana, all my buddies in school were listening to Aerosmith and Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And see.
I know you told this story, and but I love this story that your father was a school principal, and he didn't really want you to go into music. In fact, you had a scholarship to go into engineering.
This is all very true. My father, I mean, bless his heart, he grew up a conservative Southern dude, and like any parent, they want the best for their children. And all he knew was like, I got to make sure that my kid gets a good education and gets a good job. So I was held at gunpoint to, keep my math scores up and all that stuff. And that's how I was able to get a scholarship to study engineering at Boston University. But it was my mother who really knew my passion. I mean, they both did, but my dad decided to ignore it. My mom did not. And
your mom was sneaking around and getting you voice lessons. Is that right?
Totally was sneaking around.
Did you have to sneak around?
I mean, he was already pissed that she bought me a piano. That was like the first thing. And they argued for weeks over that. Like, he just did not want me to enjoy myself. It's crazy. I mean, I kind of understand it, but on the other hand, my mom really understood it, and so yeah, she got me voice lessons, and she snuck and got me an audition at Indiana University, and then they gave me a scholarship.
And then you're like, Dad. Yeah.
So I had to convince him, being the conservative one that he is, like how much money he'd be saving if he let me go to the music school in state, and they're giving me money. And I showed him in dollars and cents, and I convinced him, but I had to attach education to it because my family is very, very education oriented. That's something that I felt like I could do that. It took a couple extra years, but
you have to be kind of thankful for that in some ways, even if they made it hard for you. You know, there's a work ethic that you got there that
totally,
that is part of who
having
you
the
are.
education background. I think that it has totally facilitated me being a musical director, being able to explain things to people, just being clear about what I want and what I think everyone should have, and making sure that everyone has the necessary tools to move forward in whatever they decide to do.
Yeah, and I talked to, I know IU was this crazy melting pot at that time, this crazy collection of musicians, because I've talked to Jim Beard, he's the first person I interviewed, and of course I interviewed Sean Pelton, your long time buddy, about the scene that was happening at that time at Indiana. It was just crazy, all those musicians in there.
It was a real, I think it was a very unique time for all of us to be there at once. I mean, not only Sean and Jim, but Chris Bodie was there. Bob Hurst, exactly. Kevin Vince, I don't know if you know Kevin. Crystal Telefaro, who tours with Billy Joel. We were all playing in each other's bands and all passing each other in the music school and playing each other's recitals. Kenny Aronoff too was there too.
And were you just a singer then, or had you already started percussion?
I was a singer. That's what I was mainly doing. Percussion was in the funk band that I was part of.
And were you?
But it wasn't until I moved to New York where percussion started playing a bigger role in my life.
Were you singing jazz or classical? I mean, what was that program like?
Well, they make you leave as a well-rounded musician. So in my recital, I had to do a large portion that was classical. I did jazz and I did musical theater. That was but I was mostly singing a lot of jazz and pop. That was what I was known for.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you moved to New York in '88. Is that right? '89?
88. I think it was, 88.
'88, you and Pelton moved together in a little tiny apartment, right?
Yep.
On the East Side?
In the EV.
Yeah.
And
East Village was different then.
I mean, we moved with a gig, which made a difference. There was an artist named John Eddy. He was he was a Columbia artist, slated to be the new Springsteen, and he recorded his album at John Cougar Mellencamp Studio in Indiana. So that's how I found Sean.
Oh, the first record was made in Indiana?
Yeah.
The 1986 record, his name record, and then you were on the 1989 record.
Right.
And Sean was too.
Yes, that's right.
T-Bone Walk.
And T-Bone Walk was a producer.
Right.
Yeah. So we were, John was opening up for the Bangles last tour and the Kinks. It was a double bill. And John was opening act and we were both in his band. So we moved to New York with a gig. It wasn't just like show up and be like, what am I doing? So, which is, I've done that before. It's not cute, but it works.
But the John Eddy gig didn't last really. And then what was
really? Yeah, I think they were doing a lot of shuffling around at Columbia, and when that happens, some artists get like pushed by the wayside, and he was one of them.
And what was that like in New York for you? I mean, because those kinds of gigs, unless it's a really big gig, you're not busy with it all the time. And then you're home and you're going, what do I do? It's 1989, I'm in New York City, or it's 1990, I'm in New York City. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with myself.
Well, luckily, T-Bone was a fan of mine. And so right after that all sort of shut down, he invited me to go on tour with Daryl Hall. That was
Oh, was that early?
Solo. Yep, it was a solo Japan tour.
Wow, that's great.
And so he brought me on that. That was like one of my first big gigs to that.
And is that what, when you were singing at Indiana, did you feel like, oh, this is what I want to do? I want to be singing background with pop musicians, rock musicians.
Yeah, I knew that before I left.
Wow.
I knew that was going to be a path, at least for me, to like make records and be a soloist.
A soloist, but you were a sideman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I could be a sideman. I thought I could be a good sideman.
But it's interesting. You had these other, because I'm going to keep coming back to this thing that you're a chameleon and you're fractured. You do all these different things. You've done so many different roles.
Reasons for that. First of all, in high school, I was doing theater a lot. So and I had a really deep drama teacher that dragged me into shows, like to the point where she would lecture my father and say, please, let him do this. He would be perfect. And it won't interfere with his sports or his grades.
Because you were a serious football player, right?
I was.
And your brother went on to play for the Detroit Lions.
That's right. Look at this. You know more than I can even remember.
That's pretty heavy, though, to be in a football family like that, and to feel like, oh, well, I need to play as good as brother. A lot of pulls in various directions.
Yeah, and I was in marching band. I was playing the alto saxophone, and I was also, when they had a shortage of drummers, I'm like, give me those tritoms.
Wow.
So, I mean, the madness started pretty early, actually.
That's great. That's great. And then in New York, you were touring. So you were touring with Daryl Hall, and then eventually you got to Stomp in '94. Is that when Stomp landed in New York City?
Actually, I think it was fall of '93 is when the memo got sent, and they reached out to all the high-profile drummers in town. So Sean actually got the message, and Sean was like, hey man, someone's like calling me, you know how he talks, calling me about some shit. I don't know what it is. It seems weird and like art stuff. You want to check it out? And I'm like, okay, because we were roommates at the time. And Sean was already doing SNL, I think.
Wow, then, 93.
Was it?
Maybe. Yeah, that could be.
I think.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's been around for. Anyway, so I went in to check it out. And then, boom, I played a solo on my ass with my hands. And they're like dying laughing. And they're like, you got the job.
Wow.
What is this job? And then that's when the whole thing unfolded. They flew me to England to learn the show. And then that's how I got into it. And then after the show became a hit, the British cast left me in charge.
Wow. So you became the head of it, and you started to understand probably a deeper level about being the coordinator, the MD, and the day in and day out of theater.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I was a director. I was hiring. I was firing. I was training. I was flying around, checking on the tours, making sure that they were all up to snuff. It was deep. It's very deep. But I have to give props to Stomp in a very big way for me artistically, because that show, I don't know if people know this, it's totally based on who you are. And they basically mold the role around your strengths. And as a performer, as a musician, whatever they see. And with that in mind, you are forced to figure out who you are because you have to bring it to the table. And that's what makes the show interesting, because every time someone comes in, it takes on a whole new life because of that personality that enters. But I've taken that idea and done that with everything else that I've done after that.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And when you do things like body percussion, you really have your own thing with it.
Yeah.
You really have your own thing. And I know that people could say, well, that came out of Stomp. You learned that at Stomp. I don't feel like that. I feel like that's you. Like
Yeah.
you brought it into Stomp and they incorporated it.
Right. I mean, I was at gunpoint in Stomp. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean.
But so you took on Stomp, and you weren't doing anything with Daryl at the time?
No, I wasn't. Well, actually, I did. I think I'd already been on that tour. That was in '93. That tour that I did with Daryl Hall. I think it was in the summer, and then I got into Stomp. And then I stayed in Stomp pretty consistently through about 95, 96. It wasn't till 1997 I went on tour with John Bon Jovi and did his solo.
That's right. I was going to ask when that started because I didn't know when that started. And how did the John Bon Jovi thing come about? Because that...
Well, Sean, again, always bringing me life-sustaining jobs. John Bon Jovi hired Sean to play for his solo tour, Destination Anywhere is what it was called. And the album was produced by Dave Stewart. And Dave Stewart had a bunch of loops, a lot of shaker, tambourine kind of loops going on the whole record. And John wanted them played live. So he came to Sean and asked if he knew of any percussionists that could do this tour. And Sean was like, look no further, I'm the perfect person. So there was only 2 days left before it was going to leave. I was like the last piece of the puzzle.
Wow.
And so not only did I come in, I started singing. He was like, what, you sing? And that was kind of it. And I could kind of name my price because it's not like they had time to look.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
But then that tour ended soon enough for you to come back in New York and say, I'm going to do some off-Broadway. Strike Up the Band, off-Broadway, which was maybe your first theater aside from Stomp, right? Your
Wait,
first...
what are you talking about?
Strike Up the Band? Were you not in Strike Up the Band on off-Broadway in '98?
No. Strike Up the Band. Oh, maybe I did one of their early demos or something.
I don't know. You're credited.
I wasn't really?
You are.
So funny. That I am not in that. I was
But you had an eye on theater because you eventually did not only star in or be one of the main cast, but you became a creative element in swing. And how did you go from Bon Jovi to saying, all right, I'm going to tour with a rock star and then I'm going to move to theater and do like a throwback?
It was because of the producers. The producers of Stomp are the same producers of Swing. And they knew I was a singer. And they asked me to come in and audition for
What an incredible way that you've navigated to, well, you're also such a nice guy, and you've kept one foot in these vastly different disciplines.
Yeah. I mean, it was just being in the right place at the right time, for sure.
And being the right guy.
Having, like, a certain sort of collective gifts that just seem to fit someone's puzzle.
Yeah, it's really astounding. And you worked on Swing, and you co-wrote a couple of the numbers, and you won a theater award for it. And it played on Broadway for over a year.
Like that, it seems insane, but it was a show that was being created. Like it wasn't even being finished written before I got hired. Like we were in rehearsals and they took me to Colony Music. Do you remember that store?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Colony Music, and we're looking through books. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And they said, we're looking for an opening number for you. And I'm like, I started laughing. I said, are you open to like original material? And they said, you write? It was like, so I got together with two buddies, Eileen Reed and Michael Heitzman, and we came up with a song. And when I came and auditioned the song, I played my djembe while I was singing it. So that was another surprise. They were like, you play percussion. So that's how my opening number was. I wrote it, and I had a whole percussion rig on stage for me to play.
Wow.
During it.
That's so fantastic. And at the same time, you were also doing some. Yeah, Tamara says this is insane. I must agree. And at the same time, you were also starting to do some pretty big background, like so studio sessions. That Cher record, you did All or Nothing. You started working on David Bowie stuff with Mark Platty.
Yep.
On Hours.
Yep. And there was a time where I was being considered to go out with Sting. That's a long story, but the show caught wind of it, Swing, and they were like, don't even think about getting out of your contract.
Wow.
Yeah. I know, it's crazy.
It's great, you know. I mean, but then in '99, you made this record of yours, your first record, which is hard to find, and you can't find any of the credits. But I've been asking around. I swear that's Sean on drums. It's got to be Sean. Is it Conrad on bass? Conrad Korsch?
Bass.
And did Mark Platty work on that record? I'm talking about the record As Ever It Is.
Yeah. Mark didn't work on it, actually. But Kevin Bentz.
Kevin Bentz, right.
He played guitar and keys on it. And he also produced it.
Yeah. It sounds good. And it's
because I was doing swing at the time. And I felt like I needed to just take advantage of that moment and being in a jazz show. So that's why I created sort of a trio, because it's all upright bass on that record, but played in a funky way. And so I was trying to meld like sort of jazz sensibilities with my sort of sense of music. And that's how that record came about.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to listen to that record because I didn't listen to the entire record, but I listened to a good bit of the record and all the tracks, and I'm trying to think of a photograph of who Everett Bradley was at that moment. And considering all the different things you do and have done and did at that point, I think it fits because the record covers a lot of ground as well stylistically.
Yeah.
And, you know, if somebody had interviewed you and said, "Who are you now?" with that record, do you feel like that would have been representative of what you were feeling completely?
I think then, yes.
Yeah.
I was just immersed in a jazz show where I was scatting every night and feeling that kind of energy of being open to and reacting to music. And so that is totally where I was, which is what I think about records anyway. I don't feel like they totally encapsulate everything. I think they just sort of document where you are at that time in your life.
Yeah. I talked to Joe Locke about this, about a record being a picture in time, especially a jazz record. But this isn't necessarily a jazz record, you know? There's like the first track is like this alt rock vibe in a way.
I guess it is, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Funky clav though, big time.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that you were developing that stuff and you were staying in theater, and so at the time that you made that record, you weren't doing Bon Jovi and you weren't doing Daryl Hall. But what else was happening right around 2000?
2000. What is happening?
Because swing ended in early 2000, I think.
One
Yeah.
is when it ended. Yeah, it was like, I think it was like January or March 2001. And then 2000, oh yeah, and then later that year was 9/11, right?
Right.
Yes. And that's what triggered all the Christmas shit.
Yeah, because 2002 was when you made that record Toy. And was Toy the beginning of Holodelic? Had you thought about Toy before Holodelic existed?
Toy was first, and Toy came out of me and my friend Mike Kyoto, who we just wanted to do something joyful, just to rescue ourselves from the whole 9/11 thing. And so we started writing Christmas songs. And we wrote one, two, and then it just kept going because we were enjoying it so much. And plus we were writing it from a different sort of point of view, like a sort of a wide-eyed contemporary view of what the holidays, like how we view them now. And it just turned into a thing, and I just kept going. And I think, yeah, I was done with Toy by Christmas 2002.
Yeah, it's really astounding what Holodelic has grown into, because for anybody who's watching who doesn't know about Holodelic, it's this multi-city, multi-night, large venue, Christmas, Ohio Players, Parliament Funkadelic, just extravaganza. Everett has this huge shock white fro with Christmas lights in it. It's unbelievable. It's really fun. It's very, very funky.
It is.
It's grown into a monster, and it's only a moment.
Time, because I can just dance as hard as I need to, or sing, or not, or just chat with people. It's just
Yeah, it's really astounding.
But the main thing is bringing joy to everyone.
Yeah,
In a different way, without any kind of religious thing tied to it. It's just about pure human joy and being around each other.
yeah. It's such an incredible spirit. And I know you were around town. I remember you being around town a lot and playing with people, and kind of being like entrenched in the New York scene after that, and showing up and on sessions with people, and showing up playing with singers. And I think you were starting to work with Lucy more than Lucy Woodward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's been sort of a constant through all these big projects. I'm always popping into SNL to do something, or these albums like the Michel Legrand thing, just like little one-offs, those sort of things, always happening.
yeah. And then 2006, is that when you were reunited with Holland Oats? 2007?
2005, I think. Is that right?
I guess so. And you were touring with them.
Their Christmas. They just released a Christmas album, and they hired me for that Christmas record to tour it. And then after the last show in Philly, Daryl said, "We're really digging this. You want to just stay around and just be a part of the band?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
That's incredible.
I know. That was incredible.
But you have these, and you have all these incredible collisions of stuff that happens in your career. It feels like, it feels like 2000, I'm sure it was never slow for you, but 2000 to 2006 was more relaxed. And then you just start to get into this madness that we're going to talk about next. Because you did all this stuff with Hall & Oates, and you're still doing sessions in New York. Can you talk about that experience with working with them? Because they're pretty unique people, and I've heard some stories about the band from other band members. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I grew up on Sarah Smile. Like, my siblings brought that 45 home.
wow.
And my brother, like, wearing it out and singing it in the shower, like, that just So I was well aware of who they were and listening to them and following them in college too, and back in the MTV days when they were really like when it was more music. And yeah, so I really loved what they were doing. Anyway, so to be a part of that live was something else. And the way they really hang on to their Philly soul sound, that was really fun to be a part of that because they're really serious about the harmonies and keeping that stuff together. And, you know, with the falsetto too and everything. It was fun to be a part of an all-male band that was really serious about making sure the vocals were tight
Yeah.
like that.
And they were working pretty hard, and they were pretty particular, right?
Yeah.
About some stuff.
Yeah. So that was fun. And then that's when I think live from Daryls House.
That's right. And that was 2009 to 2010 for those Live from Daryls House things.
Right.
Because you did that Troubadour record in 2008.
Right. Yes. Oh my God. So good. Did your homework.
But then I want to talk about 2011. I heard this story. I found it. You have to tell this story because it's such a great story. And I hope you don't mind me asking you to repeat yourself, but I love this story.
Are we talking about Bruce?
Yes.
So yes, 2011, I think it was the fall. And oh my God, we left out I Love You Baby too. You can go back to that.
Go back to I Love You Baby.
The club record that I did.
Right.
That was in 95, actually.
I didn't know it was back then.
Yeah.
But you were featured. Was that your record, or was it you were featured?
I was featured. Yeah, it was a producer's album. That was happening a lot in those days.
Yeah.
I was a featured art singer for that. But I toured the world doing that track for like 2 years in there.
Really? Now that I didn't know.
Yeah. Bouncing back and forth, and it's still getting airplay.
Wow.
It's classic house club record, mostly in Europe now. But anyway, back to Bruce. So yeah, 2011, my buddy Bobby Bandiera. Do you know Bobby?
I know the name.
He guitar player, Jersey Shore. He was in the Bon Jovi band for many years in there, while Richie Sambora was still there playing guitar. And I've known him for years and years from past gigs and so forth. Anyway, he gives me a call and he says, Everett, are you available for this gig at the Stone Pony? I'm like, fine. He's like, just need you to play percussion and sing. It's what I do. I'm like, fine, send me the music. Sends me all the music, and all the songs are Bruce Springsteen songs. So I call him back. I'm like, Bobby, what's happening? Why are these all Bruce songs? He said, well, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but it's actually for Bruce. And he's doing a benefit for his son's college fund. His son started a college fund at, I think, Boston College, to help people, financially in school. So I'm like, great, I got it. So cut to the rehearsal is the sound check, basically. So it all counted on everyone doing their homework and just showing up prepared. So I get there, and they already have a percussion set up for me, and it's in the front of the stage. I'm like, Bobby, what's going on here? Like, I should be backed by the drummer, right? He's like, I figured it would be fun for him if you were just like up there at the front, just hang out. It'll be a thing. I'm like, wow, all right. So we do the sound check. Bruce, doesn't hardly even look at me. I think he just briefly introduced himself, and he's mostly just listening to everybody, making sure that we can get through all the songs. So that goes well. And then showtime, it was a whole different energy. Bruce comes over to me and he's putting his arm around me and we're like sharing the microphone and we're doing dance steps together and he's playing percussion with me. And I'm like, motherfucker, don't fuck with me during our show.
Wow.
So that was that. And then January of 2012, I get a phone call from Bruce's management saying that Bruce had such a good time with you, he's considering having a percussionist on his new tour. And he wants you to come in and rehearse with the band just so he can see what that might be like. So they were like, so can you come in on this Thursday? That was a Monday that they called. And I said, no, I can't. And there was like silence. And I said, I'm going to Japan with Holland Oats because I was still in the band then. And I said, they said, when do you leave? And it was Wednesday I was leaving. Yeah, Wednesday. And they're like, no, oh, it was on that Thursday. Yeah, I was supposed to leave on that Thursday. And they said, can you leave a day later? That's what they asked. So I could get the rehearsal in and then like flying on Friday. And then I said no because I know. And I said, because I made a commitment. It's like once I make that commitment, I try to keep it. And they're like, are you sure? Yes. So they're like, all right, well, good luck. I'm like, maybe we'll be in touch. I don't know. And, you know, let's keep in touch. So hung up the phone and I thought, oh, Everett, that was really dumb. I should have just made that happen. That was stupid. But anyway, I tried to just shake it off. Got on the plane, got to Japan. I was there for about 4 days. And then I get an email from his management saying, can you take a picture of your percussion setup and email it back and call us when you return? That was the message.
Whoa.
So I took a picture of it, and then I called when I returned, and they said, it's not like Bruce was auditioning percussionist. He was so impressed with your commitment that he decided to wait for you to return.
Wow.
Right. And then I said, well, can you send me music to learn? And they're like, no, he doesn't want you to have any music. And I said, should I bring any gear? They're like, if you want to bring some toys, you can. I'm like, okay. So then I walk in there and they have an exact replica of my setup all ready to go. And they're like, just play. And I'm like, what are we playing? They're like, he wants you to just be on your feet and see what you do.
Wow.
No, you
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
It was like scary, but at the same time, it was like, oh, I'm not tied to anything, no arrangement, nothing. I'm just gonna just make it up and go for it. And that's exactly what I did. And I did it for 3 days, and he loved it. And then he said,
great.
I mean, it was a little tense because they had me set up where Clarence usually is on the stage. And everybody noticed it, and it was a little, like, tense. I didn't even realize it. I'm like, la, 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 woo! And then so one of my buddies told me later, it's like, that's where Clarence usually is. And I'm like, oh, that's why everyone's a little, like... Oof. So then they moved me. They switched me with one of the other players, and then it felt much better. But afterwards, Bruce said, I'm really feeling this. If you are, he goes, I'd love for you to join the tour. He goes, I realize you're in Holland Oats. He's like, I would like to make that as smooth a transition as possible. Whatever we need to do.
Wow.
I don't want any kind of like drama or anything. Let's just work together and try to make this smooth.
Wow, that does not happen that often.
Right? Amazing.
That's really incredible.
Yeah.
So you did this tour with Bruce, right? And then you somehow worked out to come back in 2013 and do After Midnight.
Yes, because there was a big break in the
And
tour.
you just said, well, I'll just pick up a Broadway show in the break. I'll just go back to where my other foot is and get back on Broadway. Just not like off Broadway, just go right into Broadway.
Yeah, it was like the tour ended in August, and After Midnight ignited in like September. And I had this window of time, and I took it. And there was no kind of commitment from Bruce at that time. So not until January
Oh, what?
of the next year, 2014.
When you had another job that you took.
So I left the show to go back out on the road. And then
Right.
I was in Australia with Bruce. That's when I got the call for Meredith Vieira.
Meredith Vieira. And you became the musical director for Meredith Vieira, running this band and doing a TV show musical directing job the kind of thing you'd never done before. I remember talking to you about that during that time, just being completely exhausted and feeling like you're in over your head and learning as you go, just in the fire.
Yeah.
And Rachel Eckroth is here. She was in the band.
Yes, Rachel. Oh man, that audition process, man. I mean, there's so much about it that I learned. That's a whole other conversation.
Well, give us a little bit, because this is a rare situation where you go from touring with,
like weeping.
yeah, you go from like you go from touring with I mean, think about the 24 months that you had. You went from touring with like a rock icon, a rock legend, to being on Broadway, to going back on a tour, and then doing a TV show. It's really bizarre and such a shift of discipline.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I was ready. I was ready to be home. I'd been on the road a lot, and I thought, this is like perfect. Like, it had already been a dream of mine to be on a TV studio and just have a gig and just be home and be able to create a real life at home. I was ready for that. So when this came up, I think, rose to the occasion. And I did everything I could to make that show like happen. And I wrote the theme too, which was like, I learned how to write at gunpoint.
And really fast. We talked about that.
Really fast. Like with the whole bumper thing, I just, the way it was happening is like it needed to sound like current pop. So I was well aware of what was coming out all the time. I was listening all the time. And plus my band, they were like all much younger and hyper aware of everything. And I learned so much from them. And
yeah,
really
great band, Alex Nolan, and yeah, everybody.
They were all genius, amazing, multi-talented musicians who could make my chicken scratch that I wrote at 6 a.m. come to life and actually make sense. Very, very thankful for that.
But you had I mean, it's such a delicate thing, because the pressures are very different for TV. There's so many people in that jury of what should go and what shouldn't happen, and Meredith needing what she needs and doesn't have time to babysit anything.
Yeah. I mean, I would get homework the night before, and I'd be up till all hours writing. And I would say maybe 3 out of the 10 things that I wrote end up on the show.
Wow.
So I learned how to write like many versions of things and many ideas so they could have a choice. And I didn't even know what would work with the band too. That was the other thing, like what just sort of felt good with everyone. But, it was a learning experience, not only for me, but for them too, because these TV producers for this particular show, they were all game show producers. So it was new for them to basically, they were dealing with current events daily. And so they're trying to like keep up. And it was different than a game show.
Wow.
They're used to pushing a button and music happening and then taking the finger off the button and it stops. So, one of the big stumbling blocks that we had was like, why do you have to keep counting before the music starts? So I had to, teach them that that's how a band has a perspective of time. So we all start together and end together and at the same rate.
Right.
So then, and we had to just find a happy medium. And then therefore I had to just go 3/4 or just my head would just go down or I'd start dancing before the camera like zoomed over my way so they can see my groove, before we started. So all those things had to come into play.
Yeah. And then, so you were in that show for a year and a half, is that right?
Year, yeah, or 2 seasons, I guess.
2 seasons, right, yeah.
Year
and then you were back out with John, or Bruce. Was it Bruce and then John?
It was John after Meredith.
But now this time with John, now you got to sing a lot.
Yeah. That Papa Must Behave. No party after the show till all hours of the night.
Because I remember talking to you about that, and we were in Florida, and I said, Everett, come and hang, and you were talking about how hard the singing was. Now, I want to remind you that you studied voice at IU, so,
Yeah. And I'm a baritone. Like, I hang out like around here. Not all the way down here all the time, but around here. Bon Jovi hangs out around here. So
Right. Yeah.
And I wasn't used to that. So I had to really sort of rethink my concept of singing and maintaining and staying healthy and listening in another whole deep way.
Yeah. Well, man, now you've done so many things that people can only dream of doing, and you still keep your feet in all these places. And I know you've been working on new theater collaborations, and they're not publicized really. Can you talk about some of them? Some of them, yeah.
I've been working on 42nd Street, a new reimagined version, which I'm really, really excited about. Basically making this old classic, well, it's not that old, it was like done in the 80s, but it's a period piece, as in 42nd, or as in the 40s, basically.
Yeah.
And I reimagined it so it's like contemporary urban. So
it's been very well received so far, right?
It has. People have really, and plus, there's a genius director and choreographer involved. Michael Heitzman and Jared Grimes is the choreographer, who is like, he's a really amazing, younger, up-and-coming hoofer that's like killing it. And rhythmically fantastic, and always has been tapping to current pop and R&B stuff anyway. So it was like a hand in glove situation there. So I'm very excited about that. And, before the pandemic, we were rocking that. So it'll come back as soon as, theater returns.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you have all these things that you do. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about before I ask this last kind of wrap-up question is the great work that you've done with the SAY organization. And you're a speaker with them. You're their musical director, and I think it's really great work, and that you're giving something back, especially
from your. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Yes, SAY is an acronym for Stutterers Association for the Young, and basically it's an artistic home for young people who stutter. And the artistic director and I did Stomp together So that's how we collaborated on that. It's his baby. He was a stutterer. He still is. And he asked me to be the musical director. That was 19 years ago. And here we are, and it has grown. It's become worldwide. Now there's a say.org in Australia. There's one in New York, DC, LA, and kids from Europe now travel to our summer camp, which has become a big hit. And we are saving a lot of kids right now who are afraid to speak in class or afraid to be themselves, and we are helping them to embrace who they are, basically. And I'm just bringing music. I'm bringing another way to communicate to the situation.
That's so fantastic. It's really, you know, people such as yourself that have talents, world-renowned talents to give, and giving them to this kind of thing. It's what makes the world a better place, in my opinion. And you're bringing your great energy to this. And I know you're working on a solo show. And I keep asking the question about
away at this for a long time. I keep getting distracted.
I know, but you know, if you snap your fingers, because I kept asking this question throughout, what does Everett Bradley look like right now? And what if you could snap your fingers and if we were all out playing music, what would the Everett Bradley performance look like today? If you could have any way you want.
Well, I am working on a show where I can just do everything I do, and just so I don't have to compartmentalize, so it's all just one big fluid mess. And try to tell my story from birth using that, musically, electronically, choreographically, sonically. That's what I'm working on, and it's taking a while to make, but it's gonna get made. Ooh, Everett, you just said that out loud. Woo!
There you go.
Yep.
It's here. It's going to get made. Well, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to experience it. So it's very positive. It makes me happy.
Yeah, thank you. And it makes me happy that you're doing this. This is so fantastic. I've been watching a couple episodes, and it's really incredible. And the things that you are unveiling and getting these artists to open up is really good. And plus, the world needs this sort of communication right now. And thank you for providing that.
Well, thank you for your wonderful spirit and your talents and sharing a bit of yourself today. Thanks so much, Everett.
Yes, thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Right Key. If you enjoyed the episode, there's a lot more coming. Please click the subscribe and like buttons below. If you want to know more about me or our guests, you can find lots of information in the link just below the video. See you next time.